Bula Vinaka boxing fans. David The Tuamanator Tua. The Tua man. A couple of months ago, people, I did a video on potential comeback for David Tua. If you haven't seen that video, check this video out. I'll also drop a link to that video in the description. It is the most successful video that I've done, has had the most views. And I wanted to talk a little bit about Tua today because there's been a couple of rumors as well around a potential Saudi card for the over 50s that will feature David Tua, Evander Holyfield, Lennox Lewis, and Mike Tyson. Apparently, there's some talks around having some kind of a over 50s Legends tournament. Man, wouldn't that be amazing to see those legends fighting against each other? But for this video, I wanted to talk about how David Tua would fare against the top heavyweights of today. Now, I know these type of fantasy fights is really hard to say, oh, if this person fought this person in their prime, because you're comparing fighters in different eras, you're comparing different type of training regimes, etc., the technology that we have these days. I get all that, but for the fans and to look at a bit of a fantasy fight and to see how these fights would have actually played out. Let's talk about how David Tua would have fared against the top 3 heavyweights today, in my opinion, which are Alexander, the Cossack warrior, the cat Usyk, Tyson, the Gypsy King Fury, and Anthony AJ Joshua. So let's first talk about a prime David Tua versus a prime Anthony Joshua. I would say a prime Anthony Joshua is a Joshua that had basically beaten Klitschko, that 2017 version of Joshua. And a prime David Tua is probably David Tua sort of in his 20s, before beaten by Chris Bird, before being beaten by Lennox Lewis, kind of when he destroyed Ruckman and John Ruiz. How do I think this fight would have played out? Guys, if Andy Ruiz, who does not punch as hard as David Tua in his prime, who did not have as good head movement and fighting small as David Tua, and it did not have that massive left hook, could knock Joshua down 3 or 4 times and beat him. Who's to say David Tua couldn't have done that to AJ? I am picking, if these two had fought in their primes, I am picking David Tua to have beaten Anthony Joshua by a devastating knockout. Like I'm talking about, it would have been similar to a Mike Tyson versus Frank Bruno. I think the fight would have been very similar. I think AJ would have come in and he would have tried to throw his right hand and his jab, but Tua would have just bobbed and weaved, gotten out of the way, and he would have just let that massive left hook go, and he would have really stunned Joshua. Joshua would have, had his head basically been like a deer in headlights, and I think David Tua would have beaten Anthony Joshua. That is my opinion. What do you guys think? Now we go to the Gypsy King Tyson Fury. This is a bit of a difficult one. So if the Tyson Fury that showed up against Alexander Usyk, that showed up against Francis Ngannou, fought David Tua, the same David Tua I just talked about, that knocked out John Ruiz, that knocked out Hasim Rahman, that knocked out Michael Mora, that knocked out Fraser Quendo. If this David Tua shows up, this David Tua would send Tyson Fury into the shadow realm. where he would meet Deontay Wilder's past victims. And Tyson Fury, these victims of Deontay Wilder, will say to Tyson Fury, you survived the Bronze Bomber, but you didn't survive the Tuamanator. I think that's what would have happened. However, if the Tyson Fury that boxed Klitschko, or the Tyson Fury that boxed Wilder in the first fight, and definitely Wilder in the second fight, shot up against David Tua, that Tyson Fury, I feel, would have had enough nous, would have had enough boxing IQ to move Tua around, maybe even go down during the fight once, but to do enough to win on points like Lennox Lewis did. That is my opinion. So it really depends on which version of Tyson Fury showed up against David Tua. And then the last one is Alexander the Cat Usyk. I am going to be quite controversial with this one. You see, I see a prime David Tua against a prime Alexander Usyk if they had fought. Given it's hard because prime Usyk would have been in his cruiserweight division, right? So if they were allowed to fight and the weight was not a restriction, I believe that David Tua would have got to Alexander Usyk with his speed, with his punching power, and I believe it's very, very possible David Tua would have either stopped or knocked out Alexander Usyk purely because of his size and strength. The reason why I say this, I know people might laugh at me and say, what the hell are you on about? Alexander Usyk just beat Fury. Yeah, but both of them are not in their primes. It's pretty obvious to see that both of them are not in their primes. I think even Alexander Usyk is not in his prime, but he's obviously a lot better than Tyson Fury as it stands now. Just watch the fight against Derek Chisora versus Alexander Usyk and how much pressure Derek Chisora had Usyk under. That was Derek Chisora. David Tua's fighting style is quite similar to Chisora, but he pops a lot more punching power, speed, and his combinations are so much harder and faster. He would not have taken a back step. He would have been going after Usyk. And he would have been going, and he could fight so good on the inside as well. You know, just burying his chin, uppercuts, left hooks. I think he would have really overwhelmed Alexander Usyk. And in my opinion, he would have beaten Usyk. That's just my opinion. Like, I think he would have got to Usyk and he would have beaten him. So basically what I'm saying is that David Tua essentially could have beaten all three of these heavyweights. I think he beats this version of Fury. I think he beats any version of AJ, and I believe he beats a prime version of Usyk, who I believe was in his cruiserweight, fighting and beating the likes of Gassiev, etc. I think this version of heavyweight against David Tua would fare even worse because, I mean, in his fight against Tyson Fury, just look for about 4 or 5 rounds, how he was getting outpunched and outboxed by Tyson Fury. Now, I know Tyson Fury's got longer arms and brilliant boxer, but that uppercut that Tua was very good at throwing, and left hook. Imagine if that left hook or uppercut from David Tua had landed on Usyk. There is absolutely no way. If Usyk is jumping up, literally made him jump up from an uppercut to Fury, he was hurt. By Fury, and he was hurt. He's going down to the canvas. And one thing about David Tua, when you hit the canvas, he is a brilliant finisher. David Tua would have finished his dinner against all three. He would have finished off Fury, he would have finished off AJ, and he would have finished off Alexander Usyk. So it is really a shame, you know, how much talent David Tua had, and because of poor management and corrupt management, his career he did not live up to his full potential of what he could have been. The only guy to beat 5 world champions and never become a world champion, the only top elite fighter towards the latter end of Lennox Lewis's career that took him to the distance, apart from Holyfield, it didn't even go down. He knocked out other big heavyweights like Tyson, Shannon Briggs, Ruckman. So David Tua, in my opinion, an incredible fighter. Someday I'm going to do a bit of a breakdown, a prime David Tua versus a prime Mike Tyson, because I think that will be another awesome fight to break down. Those two fighters were two of my most favorite fighters growing up. Those were the fighters got me into boxing. Before them, I didn't know much about Muhammad Ali because he was way outside my time, right? My dad would always talk about Muhammad Ali, and then I came to watch Ali's fights later and just absolutely fall in love with his persona, his character, what he did. But prior to that, it was Mike Tyson and David Tua that really got me into boxing. So let me know your thoughts. How would David Tua have fared against Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury, and Alexander Usyk? Would he have won? Out of those 3 fights, how many do you think he would have won? Would he would have won all 3 in their primes? Or do you think he would have lost all 3? And give me your reasons why. Drop a comment, hit that likes and subscription to the link here that you can see. And as always, thank you for watching Seru Boxing and Pro Wrestling YouTube channel. Vinaka.